I'm John Sterman. I'm the J.W. Forrester Professor of Management at the MIT Sloan School, and I direct the System Dynamics group there and co-direct our sustainability initiative. So System Dynamics is applicable in a very wide range of settings. In our work, in being in the management school, a lot of our work is related to helping business organizations and other organizations improve their processes, improve the effectiveness, say, of their product development process, which is a chronic sore spot for many companies. Their products are late, their development times are unreliable, hard to predict. We also have worked extensively on process improvement in operations, which includes improving maintenance, also with big impact on safety. So I'll give you a quick example. A trap that many organizations fall into is what we call the capability trap. So you're cruising along, everything is going well, but then say the financial meltdown comes with the recession and everybody's got to tighten their belts. Well, a lot of companies will require, say, the maintenance department to take the same 10 or 20% budget cut as everybody else. Well, where are they going to get that from? They're going to get it out of training and preventive and proactive maintenance. And the result of this is more breakdowns in the future. Now, the interesting part is when there's more breakdowns, you have to take even more of the resources that are dedicated to prevention and process improvement away and apply them to fixing those breakdowns, which then causes still more breakdowns because you're not doing what you know is the right thing to do. So we've seen this many, many times. Companies get stuck in this vicious cycle of cutting the proactive resources, more breakdowns, still more pressure for short-term fixes, and they get stuck in that trap. What's interesting about it is it's not a secret that preventive maintenance is the right thing to do. Everybody knows that. What's interesting is that even though everybody knows that, many organizations find that they are not able to do it consistently. And so from a research point of view and a policy implementation point of view, the challenge is not to tell them what's right. They already know. The challenge is to help them escape the trap, because the first thing that happens if you start to do the right thing is your costs are going to go up and the availability of your equipment is going to go down. You have to take your machines offline so you can do that deferred maintenance. You have to send your operators to training. All of that's going to hurt your performance in the short run. Organizations need to be prepared for that in order to escape that trap through that worse before better behavior.
So you help them think hurt them.
Sure, there's a definite short-termism that afflicts many of these organizations, but I don't think you want to assume that that's baked into human nature. I think what happens often is that people necessarily are forced by the circumstances they're in to begin to think more and more short-term. If equipment is breaking down all the time, if you're going from one crisis to another, constantly fighting fires, you don't have time to think about the long term. That's not because you don't think it's important, it's because you literally don't have any time because you're constantly fighting fires. So perhaps people have a short-term orientation, but what we find is that the best organizations and the ones that we've worked with to escape this trap gradually develop the capability to focus on the long term, make it present and real in everyday decision-making so that they are able to resist those temptations to cut corners. So on the research side, we develop formal quantitative simulation models, carefully grounded in the data and analyzed, and that's for the research world. But in the practical world where we're trying to make a difference with organizations, and that's a research activity as well. The research challenge is often not what is the right thing to do, it's how to get it done. The gap between knowing and doing is often huge. So we don't hit the people that we're working with a lot of equations. It's very practical. We've learned, sometimes the hard way, that the best way to reach people is often building on what they know, not assuming that they've got a lot of quantitative background. Happy to bring out the data and the equations if they're interested, and a surprising number of people out there are. But there's also a lot of people for whom that's just not the right way to approach it. We've developed a wide range of practical tools that work at the operational level to help people develop their systems thinking capabilities without having to know any mathematics. So this challenge of doing analysis for a market or a product that doesn't yet exist is one that we've taken on, and our former students have taken on in the real world a number of times. Obviously, data are going to be an issue there, but you use the best available expert knowledge, analogies to prior situations to develop the analysis as you can. To give a very particular example, we have a project on the emergence of alternative fuel vehicles. It's perfectly obvious that the current transportation system with automobiles and light trucks powered by gasoline and fossil fuels is not only not sustainable, but can't scale as China and India and other developing countries become wealthier and people need and want more access and mobility. It's not going to be possible for them to do it the way the United States has done, with hundreds of millions of vehicles and millions of lane miles of roadway, huge dependence on foreign oil. That's just not possible. It isn't going to happen. So there will be an alternative transportation system, and the question is, will it be one that we've designed and that we want, or will it be one thrust upon us by circumstance and accident? So the challenge here is, how do you create a market for alternative fuel vehicles that's sustainable, not only ecologically, but economically? And both are required. We could have the most wonderful, ecologically sound vehicle with zero emissions, but unless people are willing to buy it, it doesn't do any good. And people are not going to be willing to buy such vehicles unless they're sure that they can get fuel for it, energy for it, whether it's electricity or hydrogen or biofuels, anytime and anywhere. But the hundreds of billions of dollars required to articulate that infrastructure for fueling, for servicing vehicles, et cetera, is not going to be invested unless the fuel suppliers are confident that the market will be there. So you have a classic chicken and egg problem, or we would say reinforcing feedback problem, of how do you kickstart that market. So we've developed a suite of simulation models that examine this problem. It's a spatial model, it's behavioral. We look at driver behavior, range anxiety, people's desire to top off if they're not sure they can get fuel, how that suppresses purchases of the alternative vehicle, what you can do to overcome that. Model's been calibrated for California, the most important such market in the United States. And we're now working with a variety of automakers and regulatory bodies and governments to help them coordinate their actions and bring about the change that we need so that these markets can actually develop.